Hi, this is Vatsa reporting from India, and this is VHDTV.
Yes, this is Hrudai from the US. How is it?
Things are good. I'll be having the weekend. It's 3:30 a.m. in the morning, so it's all good. How about you?
Oh, it's really good here.
All right. Any plans for
Oh,
the weekend?
none, not really. I'm going to my friend's house.
That's good.
That's that's pretty much the plans, and then
All right.
Nicola here. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So you witnessed U.S. presidential election recently, right?
Yes, yeah.
So you were well informed. You saw the debates. Uh, Everything was cool. Everything was broadcasted on TV. There were few questions and confusions about the fairness in the election, whether it's the ballot, the counting, voting by mail questions.
Yeah.
But overall, the majority of people have given their verdict, so things are moving as expected. But there was also another country which went through this process, but the people are really, really distressed. This happened, I think, December 2nd or 3rd. Venezuela went through these elections, and again, the same President Nicolas Maduro, got elected. And people are really unhappy because they know that it is rigged. Okay, so
Oh,
today we'll talk about Venezuela, and maybe even Belarus, because you are also aware of Belarus, the things that are happening. You have your one of your close friend from Belarus, or his family is from Belarus. So we'll also talk about that. So this President Nicolas Maduro, is elected president, but the entire or the majority of the population feels that it is rigged. There's not much opposition there. So people are unhappy. They are almost on streets protesting. And in fact, the president himself is instilling fear in the society and the population. They have the highest inflation rate. We'll talk about that. But because of this distress in the society, there's tremendous amount of corruption, a lot of power cuts. People are not getting the basic food and medicine, and because of this distress, this highest number of murder rate compared to any other country. It's really sad. So I spoke about inflation. It's actually hyperinflation. It's crazy. Before we understand the real facts about Venezuela, let's understand what is inflation. Inflation can happen because of three different reasons. The first reason is called as demand inflation. So all of a sudden, if government reduces the, let's say, interest rates. So for example, buying a house, let's say if the interest rate is 5%, people will think about it. But if it gets reduced to 1%, they feel that, hey, you know what, we have to hardly pay any interest, so let's go and buy the houses. And because people will go, everybody wants to buy a house, the and if there are limited supply, limited housing supply, then the demand to the for the housing increases. That means people will end up paying more amount for the same, let's say, 3-bedroom house. Okay, so that's inflation. So now maybe the second aspect is cost push, where, let's say, oil, like a natural resource, the price of that natural resource, because it's not available, or it's available in limited capacity, the price increases. Same thing with highly skilled laborers. Let's say if government has not invested much money into development, educational development, that 10 years down the line, the country will face this problem because you will have very less skilled laborers. So the cost will be rigged. Land is also another example. If there is a residential plan and that's very limited, it's a typical demand supply problem. There's also a third way where the inflation rates can increase. It's by printing money. Government prints more money, which means that there will be more money floating in the system. So that means people will have more money. They will end up paying more money to buy the same product. So the value of the product is not changing. That means the value of the money is decreasing because you're now paying more to buy the same thing. So this is inflation, and Venezuela is actually going through a hyperinflation phase. How did it all started? In fact, if you go back in time, I think till 1970, Venezuela was one of the richest nation in the uh, South America or Latin America, right? It actually sits on one of the largest oil reserves. Okay, so it's a great natural resource which has a lot of demand. Uh, so that means it is supposed to be a rich country, but things started changing. It's falling. It started falling down. It became worse since 2013. Okay, and by 2017 there was not even an opposition, and at that time the president was Nicolas Maduro. Since 2013, it is Nicolas Maduro who is ruling Venezuela. But before that, it was Chavez. Chavez was a very charmful president since 1999, I guess. So the crowd loved him. He was like a celebrity. I mean, wherever he walked, like thousands of people gathered, and he was very happy to talk to them. But he was charming. He was the greatest leader because he took the advantage of the oil prices. Back then, oil had a greatest demand, so he did not invest that into, distributing into other resources like the labor, the skill set. Those things were not developed. They just relied on one single source, on the oil prices. Okay, so that was all good. Again, it was because the oil prices, I think in 2004, oil prices reached the maximum. That means Venezuela was making the big amount of profit, and it was all good. But there was no real plan towards the society. So when Chavez passed away, I think he died in 2013. Nicolas Maduro took his place, and by 2015, oil prices plummeted. It started decreasing rapidly.
Why?
It's a demand versus supply problem. It's a world started looking at alternate sources. Yeah, other countries started extracting the oil. So that means there were more supply. Boom, it started crashing. So now the value started, it started getting into inflation, which means the same product, we have to pay more price. And guess what happened? To rig this one, Nicolas Maduro came up with his own artificial conversion ratio. Okay, for example, let's say a 1 liter of Coke bottle, Coca-Cola, in United States is about $1 or probably $1.50, right? And here in India is probably about 70 to 80 rupees. Okay, so the conversion ratio is still the same, right? It's 1:70 or 1:75. Okay, so the value of the Coca-Cola is the same whether it's in United States or in India. Okay, but what if somebody has to pay for like 12,000 their currency? That means the value of the currency is really, really, really bad, right? Or really, really, really low. And that's what happened. So this guy, just to protect it, he came up with his own ratio saying that I think Bolivar is the currency of Venezuela. Okay, so he said, hey, 10 bolivars is equal to $1. But just because he says that, it doesn't mean that that's the real value. The real value is actually 12,000 of Bolivar is $1. Okay, so
That's the real value?
that's the real value. That means people has to just take this much cash, okay, to buy probably an orange or an apple. It's crazy, okay. But the thing is, because he came up with this ratio, all the governmental bodies and his allies were able to purchase something for like, yeah, less price. And then there was this black market when they themselves sold it for higher prices. So people were really distressed. So for example, a medicine costs let's say about $1. Okay, so the government and its allies will probably pay 10 bolivars and buy that medicine and sell that in the black market, where they have to, give 12,000 bolivars for the same medicine, right? So that's really crazy. So that's the hyperinflation that was induced.
But if the president made that, what is the ratio, then can't the entire city use it? The entire country, I think.
No, that's a problem, right? So it's an artificial value, which means any product that you need to purchase, it's an international price. Like Coca-Cola was a good example, although it's bad for our health. It's a good example because internationally it's the same value. It bears the same value, right? So you purchase a goods, even a component that is manufactured within Venezuela is probably dependent on raw materials that are imported from some other country, right? So all these natural products or the components that goes into the product will be affected, and henceforth the final product will be affected. The pricing of the final product will be affected. Okay, so it's crazy, and people started opposing it. Chavez did something similar, but that was favoring the population, so nobody questioned. But this is actually going in the wrong direction, and people started questioning. But then what? Because of his power, he actually changed the support system or the government system itself. So today, he's in that such a position where there is no opposition in the government. So whatever, he's almost becoming like a dictator, although they claim it as a democratic country, or there is some kind of a democracy over there where people can voice out their through a election or a voting system. It's not respected. I mean, 80% will be already controlled by the government. So bottom line is the same guy is winning again and again. People are really unhappy with that. In fact, almost more than 5 million people have moved out of Venezuela thinking that there is no future in that country. It's really sad. And the same thing is actually happening in Belarus. From the past 26 years, the same guy, Alexander Lukashenko, is actually heading the country. Okay.
So that is dictator? That's a dictator?
Yeah, he's claimed as the last European dictator, although there was this election that happened because he controls the entire system. He won, he got the majority votes. See, if somebody is getting the majority votes, that means the entire population should be happy with it, right? But after this election, the entire population was actually on the streets protesting it. That means they all know that the election was rigged. Okay, so there was no fair election.
How did they rig it?
I mean, if they control all I mean, there are multiple methods that they can rig. Basically, if the population is interested in voting the other person, you can stop that population from entering the voting booths, pulling, right? Another way is just going and tampering all their votes, or burning, destroying the votes against him, right? There are different mechanisms, or as simple as that, fake the counting. Just come up with some number and say that he's the winner, right? All these things have happened. I don't know the exact story behind how they rigged it, but these are all the possibilities, okay? But the fact that the majority of the people are protesting on streets tells you that there's something that is not going in the right direction, right? So just because one individual wanted to enjoy the power, both in the case of Lukashenko or Maduro, the entire country is actually suffering. So we are really fortunate that we are part of a democratic country, be it United States or India. In fact, India is the largest democratic nation in the entire world, and United States is one of the powerful democratic nation in the entire world. So
India is not the largest democratic because USA is larger.
USA, the size is larger, but the democracy is not based on the size of the country. It's based on the number of people in the country.
But is the second largest? What about China?
Is that democratic country? You have to go and check
Sure
it. Okay, this is something that you're going to check on the web page right after this call.
I'm just going to write that down.
Sure.
Okay.
You can write it down later. Did you like this question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Take a look at it. So understand. Again, I think we are going back to one of the episodes where we discussed about with a great power
comes great responsibility.
And if the powerful guy who's the president is not having the right responsibility, the entire nation will be on streets protesting against him. This was my time. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.